Today I'm thrilled to have Steve Saporito here with me from Melbourne, Australia. With several decades of invaluable experience, Steve has become one of Australia's most sought-after portrait studio training consultants. Originally an accountant, Steve's love of photography made him seize the opportunity to purchase a portrait studio and embark on a new career. One studio soon expanded into 3, and Steve's career shifted again to training studio owners' employees using his highly successful systems. For the past few years, Steve has been busy creating successful portrait selling spaces across Australia and New Zealand, having opened and designed over 30 studios for his clients. His training is helping both home-based studio owners and large retail studio owners to deliver the highest standard of customer service possible. He has trained his clients to consistently achieve $3,000 plus average sales, thus resulting them earning $1 million a year turnovers from the comfort of their own homes. Steve's biggest strength is in understanding people and what motivates them to desire and invest in photography. His method lies in creating studio systems that honor the client's desire for beautiful and meaningful portraiture that they will cherish for a lifetime. His training empowers the confidence to learn how to engage, service, and retain your clients with a strong client-focused attitude. So welcome back to Photography Marketing Master Steve. It's fantastic to have you on here with us again.
Hey, Nigel. How are you? I can't believe you're going to put up with me again.
You know, I had to find somebody.
Out of that sheer desperation. That's awesome.
Joking apart, I am so thrilled to have you back here with us. That last episode that we did about the excitement calls and all that kind of thing was just so interesting. And so we've got to get you back for part 2, which is, of course, the in-person sales presentations of the finished photography. So in the last episode, obviously, as I just said, we talked about the process of booking clients through what you call excitement calls. Can we get a brief recap of that just to set the stage for what we're going to be talking about today?
Of course. The excitement call to me and the people that I mentor is exactly that. It's about every time we interact with a client, our goal is to excite people about what we do and to get them excited about their own life again. Because most people are just sort of sitting around and letting life happen around them, I suppose. And we need to remind them about what's great about them and rediscover themselves. And the excitement call process basically has 7 major steps involved in it, and it is a process, but yet it is a genuine conversation that you have with somebody that reveals their gem or what's special inside of them. And of course, in every stage, in every call, we're also looking towards finding out what product is going to best suit that client and where they would love to display it in their home. So that way we can actually give them a genuine and realistic price for what they're after, but not until we've built that desire for them to have it in the first place.
So the excitement calls are there to tap into what it is that people can get excited about their own lives, as well as getting excited about the photography itself. But you mentioned in there about getting them to decide or to find out what the most appropriate product would be for them as the end result. And so when they book, are we at that point booking with the express intention of saying, okay, we are shooting for a wall portrait or we are shooting for an album? How does it work at that point when they book and before we do the photography?
Well, there's probably a few steps that need to happen before that. The client needs to become associated with what you are going to be shooting. So there's a point where we need to discover something about them that they absolutely value in themselves and their family and their relationships. And we need to really focus on associating that client with that experience. When you do that, they enter a high level of visualization, so they can physically see the detail, physically be part of, I suppose, that experience. When they're visualizing, they're actually seeing the shots happen and what you're going to be doing even before you've taken a photo, which makes it really easy for them to then, if you ask the question, if we were to capture this for you, where would you love to display this in your home? So rather than, working towards the product, it's about shooting and discovering where in their home they would love to display it and the style of their home and recommending the perfect product that's going to work in their home. So you're actually physically shooting for their home and the solution to their problem of what do I do with these photos once you've taken them, rather than for, I suppose, a specific style or a book or an album. It's really about understanding them, their style, their home, and using our artistic ability to fulfill that need to complement what they have or their ideal of what they want. Once they've seen that and they've got a picture in their mind of where they would love to see it and where it's going, then it makes it really easy to quote them a price. And because they've associated with what you've described to them, that price becomes really real to them. And I think this is one of the key factors that needs to happen, is that if they do associate with what you've got to say and they do believe that price is real and relative to them, then they're coming in educated and ready to spend that money that you've quoted them. And in a lot of cases, the people that I'm mentoring will quote around about that $1,500 mark, sometimes $2,000, $3,000 mark. And the clients, because they're so associated with the excitement call and what you're about to create for them, can see themselves spending that because they're valuing what we're doing already. And it makes it really easy for them to understand that that's how much they need to spend if they want it. It makes it really easy for them to picture it in their home already. And if they can do that, they've already bought it from you. So by the time you've taken a photo, they've basically in their mind already bought something from you, which is awesome.
And let's compare that for a moment with the more common model of doing things where the photographer maybe, perhaps meets with clients ahead of time and has consultation calls with them and that kind of thing,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Gets them to book, and then they set a date and for the portrait session. They go out, they do the photography, and then it becomes a case of the photographer almost saying to themselves, I've created the photographs, now I need to get them back to the studio to see what the heck I can sell them.
Yeah, or they fear that because they haven't talked about price. And this is very common in our industry, is we seem to create this smoke and mirrors effect where we don't talk about product, we don't talk about price. And the result is that when you're shooting, you don't actually know what you're shooting for, which makes it really, really hard. So it's almost like a wedding photographer that isn't shooting for the wedding album. By the time you're finished, you don't really have anything. If you're not shooting for the album, you don't have the raw materials to create an album. And I suppose, when you first shoot a wedding, you don't really know, or if you don't really understand all the components that make up a wedding album, if you don't capture those components and all those detail shots, then you're just not going to create an exciting album. And portrait photography is no different in that you need all those elements and all those details that the client wants. The problem with not understanding the detail of what the clients love and those expressions they love the most when their child is doing whatever they're doing, or understanding that their most favourite part of going to the park is the journey to the park and that moment when their son reaches for their hand and capturing that moment, capturing the detail of those hands almost touching and then, him holding their middle finger, because that's what they love about that journey, is that you end up shooting for the sake of shooting and never know exactly what the client wants. And this is where a portrait shoot can take an hour and a half, 2 hours, 3 hours, and we believe we're giving our clients value. But the reality of that is that we never really took the time to understand exactly what the clients treasure and love and are motivated by. So, we're using a machine gun effect in that we need to shoot everything that we believe is important, but we never bother to find out what it is. And that then leads to showing way too many photos to the client because we don't really understand what they value. And any price, and I suppose the other thing too is because we don't understand what the client wants, we haven't got them picturing any product in their home, we don't understand the style of their home, or whether they're going to be moving to a new home and what their ideal home would look like and what their ideal furniture would look like, where it's going to go above that ideal furniture, how big that ideal furniture is, then we're quoting generic prices. And so one of the biggest mistakes I hear is that we go into this generic mode of, well, prices start at and the average person spends, and let me send you my price list. None of it sticks because they haven't related to anything that you've said. And if none of it sticks to them, they don't believe any of what you've just said relates to them. So in most cases, they haven't heard any of it. And the only thing maybe that they have heard would be the cheapest possible option, maybe in some cases. But in most cases, they haven't heard any of it, and none of it sticks.
Let's fast forward a little bit through the photography session itself, okay,
Yeah.
and go now to the end of that where we have the photographs. We've captured everything that we need, either for the wedding or for the portraits, and now it's time to make that final sale, to get the photographs into the hands of the client. Why is it so important to do this in person? I mean, we live in a very technologically amazing world where it's very easy to upload photographs to, let's say, a website gallery with password protected with some fancy graphics and layouts and ordering options and all this kind of thing. Couldn't we just do that and just say, hey folks, there you go, just log in here, pick what you want, get your credit card out and pay, and I'm going to go out and deal with the next bunch?
Yeah, you could do that. I personally and all of the people that I mentor, I don't advocate that method, purely because if we are true to what we are doing and we are offering a personal service to our clients, and most photographers believe that they are offering a personal, customized service to their clients, that is the most exciting part for the client. So physically, the unveiling of the photographs that you've just taken is scary, exciting, revealing. Sometimes it can validate all of the things that they've felt about themselves, but nobody has ever been able to capture or show them. So this is the part where they're the most vulnerable and emotional. And if we are genuine about offering our clients great customer service and want our clients to have the very best experience with us, this is the point where they have the highest intensity experience in our whole process. So if we abdicate that and dump it online, there's nobody there to coach them through it. And a lot of the times clients don't understand or know how to choose photography. And their biggest fear is choosing the wrong photos and then being embarrassed when they hang it up on the wall. So this is the point when they need an expert to help them design their product, design their artwork, and help them make that choice. So it's the most exciting part for me. It's the part that I used to love to get involved in the most, because the clients, that's when they get really, really excited. And I think a lot of photographers, because they love the shooting part of it, believe that the shoot is the most exciting part for the clients. But in actual fact, when you see them in that design consultation and interact with them, for them, this is, the scariest. There's a whole mix of emotions, and you can't leave them on the sidewalk to deal with all of that by themselves.
You mentioned the phrase design consultation in there, and it sounds like that's what you use for your terminology for what we would typically call a sales presentation.
Well, it's not a sales presentation. It is a design consultation, because ideally I don't think that we need to sell. Well, effectively we're selling all the way through, like from the very first phone call, but really we're not really having to sell, because if we're focused on serving our clients and focused on what they need and focused on what our clients want to express within themselves and their family, then we don't really have to sell. Our job is purely to present something or find a solution for a problem that they have. If you really delve in well into the excitement calls, you'd be amazed at the stories that you get from people. Sometimes it's that their teenage daughter they feel has confidence but isn't showing it because she's feeling rejected at school, or has lost that confidence that she had as a young girl, and they want to revive that and for you to capture that part of her personality that they know is in there, but she's suppressing because of all of these other factors in her life. So once you're able to sort of get into their heads and understand that, if you're able to then capture that solution for them and capture that part of her personality that is in there but doesn't show a lot of people, if they can have that as a reminder in their home that reinforces that part of her personality, then they would pay anything for that, and price doesn't become an issue. I think price becomes an issue only when the client believes that the value that they're receiving doesn't match the amount that we're asking. So if you're totally focused on providing a heap more value than the price you're asking, then it never becomes an issue. And this is where the people that I mentor are finding that people are spending $4,000, $5,000 plus on their artwork, because they've matched and been able to discover what's really important to people.
I'm so glad that you brought up this idea that it's a design consultation as opposed to strictly a sales presentation. Because this is how we typically look at it, certainly here in the States and probably mostly elsewhere too. In the traditional sense is that you get the clients to come in, you project the images onto a canvas on the wall, and they look at them and go, oh, I love this one, I love this one, I like that one, I don't like that one, and so on and so forth. And then they choose one for perhaps a wall portrait and maybe some for some smaller prints and so on, or several for a book or whatever.
Well, hopefully they're creating a story and creating a few wall collections.
But from the photographer's perspective, attaching this idea or label, if you like, of, oh, I'm in a sales presentation, really creates an awful lot of pressure and an awful lot of stress on them to perform, in the sense that, well, I've got to get as much money as I can from this particular event or meeting. What you're saying is that the final exchange of money, the sale, if you want to call it that final exchange of money is more secondary, really.
Which is what we as an industry really struggle with, is the ability to receive money. It's a result. And I think a lot of people go into this in-person sales making it the focus, which is totally wrong. The money is a result of the service and your ability to match what you have with the solution as a solution to the client's problem. I think that half of the issue is that when we were going into a design consultation, a lot of photographers feel that the photographs that they've taken and they're presenting is the end result. Whereas I know that when I walk into a design consultation, I know that what I'm showing them is purely the raw materials that we have to work with to then create something amazing. And I think that's where you can really start to become creative in the way that we choose to combine those raw materials, being the photographs that we've taken and the detail shots to create that story that they so desperately want the rest of the world to know. And it's that mix and combination that excites people. The photographs we've taken in camera, or whether you're working them before you show them to the client, that it's not the end result. It's just the beginning. And the real creativity comes in taking those raw materials and putting something together that totally excites the client, that reflects their story and scribes something that not many people see in them, and that they so desperately want other people to hear and see, that's part of their personality. So I think we're not seeing it as, I think a lot of people struggle with it because they're not seeing it as a creative outlet or a creative ability. But to me, that is where the magic happens. The magic really does happen in that design consultation, when we're putting all of those pieces together and creating something magical for the client. So it's almost like when we take the photographs, to me, the photography at that point before the design consultation is almost like going to the supermarket and purchasing, the flour, the eggs, the milk, and everything that you need to create an amazing souffle. But the design consultation is like a chef being in the kitchen, where they combine just the right amount of all of those ingredients in the right order and nurture them, create and give it the love that it needs to then create the perfect souffle that's going to tantalize all of their senses. And we need to, at this point, create something so delicious and stimulate so many of their senses and get them excited and involved. And it's a journey that has to happen together with the client, because they need to own it before you finish creating it, because their input is what you need. That's that extra spice. So getting them involved in that creation and of that product is that secret ingredient that you need to give it that final zest. And it's just magical when all of that comes together in the design consultation. And for me, if you're not taking your clients on that journey, they're missing out on the very best part of the whole experience, which is that when it all comes together.
Clearly, from everything that you've said so far, the process whereby we get people excited about the photography and about themselves, we get them to think about the kind of end result that they might most likely want as a result of the photography. We do the photography, we go out and we create, as you say, the raw ingredients that we need to produce the result. And then we have the design consultation / sales process, whatever we want to call it, where we put all of those together to create something for them that they're going to fall in love with and feel like they own and are going to want to invest in. If all of this works so well, why do you think so many photographers shy away from in-person sales like this?
I just don't believe they understand how important this part of the process is to the client. I think a lot of the people, well, I can only talk historically, the people that I've interacted with and helped transform their business and their client's experience, their belief was that the most important part of the experience was the physical photographic shoot, and never saw the design consultation as something that was artistic or that important. So I think it's just a mind shift in understanding that is, one of the most crucial parts. And to a client, they get very nervous about that unveiling of themselves, because historically, whenever anyone else has taken a photograph of them, they've never really liked it, and it's never really represented who they are. So then they begin to believe that what people have captured in the past is a true representation of who they are and what they look like, when in actual fact nobody's actually ever bothered to ask them or delve into what's important to them and totally get who they are. It's really important, and I don't believe that most photographers see that how crucial it is to help them in that part of the process, because in most cases when they're looking at photography, they don't understand what they're looking at. They need to be educated on all of the elements within a photograph that make it special. And sometimes they need help to decide, what would make a great lead photo, composition-wise, where the subject is drawing their attention to all of those little details that most people don't see. And we can't expect people to see that or understand that. They're not used to looking at photos, and they're not used to seeing themselves in photographs and understanding the power that is contained within that one photograph that is up on that screen right now. So it is part of our responsibility, I believe, to hold their hand through that and to educate them through that, so then they are making the very best decisions. And if we do that really well, then the clients are really confident about what they're choosing and what they would love to display in their home. When they have that confidence, it's not hard for them to make a decision. And I hear I was in a forum last night, there was somebody talking about the fact that their client came in and they couldn't make up their mind, and now they're asking for digital photos. We've caused that because we've probably confused them all the way through the process, and we haven't taken ownership of that design consultation and educated them to a point where they can be totally confident. And that's their safety net, to ask for everything on CD, because it's just too hard and you haven't helped me, so I'm going to fall on my safety net. Most of my clients don't have that issue where people are wanting digital photos, because they've been held all the way through it. They understand what they're buying and the elements of what they're buying. I actually had a Facebook comment in our group yesterday, and this particular photographer said, I had a photographer, a shoot and burn photographer, send me a client who wanted digital photos, and I normally charge $250. The other photographer charges $250 for this, and she was too busy, so she referred the client to me, but said it probably won't work because she only wants digital photos. The reality of that is that most people don't know what to ask for, so that's what they fall back to. And once the client went through the entire process with the excitement calls and the design consultation, the client was so excited to spend $4,000 with this person and never asked for the digital photos and wasn't interested in them. And it's about, I think, our expectation and about what we want, or the journey that we want our clients to have with us, and just experiencing it with them. Most people don't know what to ask for, and they're asking for whatever is the loudest at the moment and what their friends are telling them to ask for. They don't know what they want, and it's up to us to guide them through this journey. I don't think at all we are here to sell photos. The end result is not to ever just be selling pieces of wall art or a photo book. The goal is to really allow them to have an authentic experience and an authentic conversation with you, so much so that you've changed their perception of themselves, have reconnected them with their families, and really what they're buying is a portal to access those feelings and those emotions and that reality of who they really are whenever they need to, more so than a piece of wall art or a photograph that you're sending them. It really is something that's going to trigger those anchors in their mind to go back to that time when you were there to help them realise how important their 2-year-old is right now, and how much they've missed out on, and really raising their sensitivity to all of those things that 2-year-old does, and how special and magical that child is to them. And that's got to be our result.
The primary reason why photographers are shying away from this process of handling, as you call it, the design consultation in person, actually sitting down in a room with their client, talking to them, showing them the images and helping them to decide what it is that they want as the finished product. The reason so many photographers are not wanting to do that is really out of fear, isn't it? It's because they fear that they're not going to get the sale, or that it's not going to be as good a sale as they would have hoped. And all of that really is a direct result of them not understanding that the actual sales process is supposed to take place a lot earlier than that, way back in the excitement calls, and probably somewhat during the photography session itself.
Yes, there's a lot of elements, I think, that attribute to that fear. And I think, yes, that's part of it. In a lot of cases, many photographers have avoided talking about price at any point. And so walking into a room and then building people's expectations, and then suddenly then having to, for the first time, quote a price once they've fallen in love with it, can really be frightening for the client and frightening to the photographer. So unless you're physically discussing a specific price with people well before you've even booked them, and then again after you've booked them, and at various stages throughout the process, which is what I mentor through our membership, leaving it right to the end is really scary. And I don't think I could walk into a design consultation and do that, because it is scary. It needs to be done well and truly before that. And if you're focused on, I suppose, the sale and the money, clients can sense that. And it can't be about the money. It's got to be about finding the perfect product that's going to work for them. And yes, that comes at a cost, and there is a price that is attached to that. But the primary focus has got to be putting the very best photographs together that are going to work for their situation. And the result is that they then reward you for that, because you've given them so much value. And I think if photographers walked into that design consultation with a goal of providing them with a heap of value, then it makes it so much easier to ask for the price, because they know that they've given them way more value than the price that they're asking for.
So what does a typical in-person design consultation look like? Can we walk people through what this process kind of looks like? Imagine, let's say that I am one of your photography clients, and we did a portrait session for my family, and I show up at your studio coming to see the finished photographs and to help create the final product. What's the process? What do we do?
I think before you even walk into that, we need to make sure that the design consultation room or space is set up properly. And whether that's done in the client's home, whether it's done in a space you've created in your garage, or whether that's done in a retail space, making sure that you have all the right elements in the right place is really, really important. So making sure that you only have what you want to sell on display. And this is where a lot of photographers fall, is that they've got wallets on display or CD covers on display, and then complain about photographers only wanting CDs. So when a client walks into the space that you've created for them to have that reveal and have that design consultation, there's a lot more power in all the subliminal selling in the room setup and the way that you've presented yourself to the client. And that tends to overpower a lot of what you can say and all of the lines that you can come up with as objection handlers once those objections come up, because you've laid all those traps for yourself that the client doesn't know any better, because as they're stepping forward, they're falling into all of these holes that you've laid out so meticulously for them, and then wonder why. So the setup of the room is really, really important, and I've spent quite a lot of time understanding it and delivering it in our membership. It's a big area. The next thing is whether you've chosen and how you've chosen to show the clients their photos, which ideally, and in an ideal world, it would be projection, because projection is a reflective light source as opposed to an LCD screen, which is pumping light into people's eyes. A lot of people struggle with choosing size and making sure that it's right. And when you are pumping light into people's eyes, it tricks them into believing that what they're seeing is bigger than it actually is. So then when they're comparing, say you're showcasing a 16 or a 20 by 24 to them and saying, this is the size that I think would work for you on an LCD screen, if you can show them that size on an LCD screen, it looks bigger than if you were to then show them that same size as a canvas or a frame photo on the wall. So then they're going between, well, that doesn't look right and that looks bigger and I'm not sure. So it just adds to that confusion. So then I think in that design consultation, it's really important to have prepared the presentation well. So then that way, some of the major fears that they're feeling are dealt with right from the start. So, with a client, what do you think, Nigel, are some of those fears that a client is experiencing on the lead up to seeing their photos?
I would say usually, especially for women, it's going to be, am I going to look horrible in these images?
Yeah, that's one of the major ones. Yes. And especially for women, it's because for whatever reason, women seem to be always made to feel not good enough and are trying to compare themselves, which is wrong, to lots of imagery out there on TV and in magazines and everything. Do I measure up? Am I good enough? Will I look good in these photos? Or is all of those photos that they took of me at that party truly reflective of what I really look like? So that's got to be dealt with immediately. So in your presentation, you have to have the very best photo that totally alleviates her biggest fear about herself. And you get to know your clients. And sometimes it's, I have an odd nose, I'm an odd shape, I always look uncomfortable when I have my photos taken. Nobody can take a photo of me with my eyes open. So whatever that fear is, you need to make sure that right at the very beginning of your slideshow presentation, that you prove to them that they're not that person and that you, as an expert, have captured the very best of who that person is. Now, traditionally, in most cases, most people warm up within the photo shoot and get better and better within that photographic experience as you go along in taking their photos. So usually the very best photos are never the very first photo you've taken. So you need to rearrange your slideshow in a portrait session, because I know in a wedding you need to follow the story, but in a portrait session, usually the very best photos aren't the first photos. So you need to prepare for that design consultation and make sure that you've selected the best photos and not leave them in the order that you've taken them. So then that way the clients are getting the very best experience. So the rule is the first 5 to 10 images that you're showing the client need to alleviate all of those fears that they may be feeling. So if in a family situation, you've got, mum, dad and 2 kids or 3 kids, mum's like, her fear is, am I going to look good? And another fear is, will they get a great photo of my kids together? So that's got to be another one that's got to be in there. Is there going to be a decent family photo? And in a lot of cases too, did they get a great photo of me and my partner that I'm going to feel great about sharing with my friends and family? So there's a whole lot of, and each client's very different, so you need to understand your client, but we need to make sure that in every single case, we've covered off all of those things. So there's a lot of preparing that has to happen. And by I say a lot of preparing, I mean, once you understand all this and got it down pat, I know that at the end of a shoot, I can download, crop, cull, get everything ready for a client to have the design consultation within 10 minutes of it all happening. But you just need to have everything that you need in your mind and just get in there and do it.
So, if I've been out on a photo session with a family, as you say, mom, dad, 3 kids, and maybe the family dog at the park or in their garden at home, and we know that we're not just going to go there and say, okay, everybody get together, come on dog, look at the camera, take a photograph, and then maybe take a couple more just to be sure. We're not going to just do that. We're going to take mom and dad together. We're going to take the kids together, the kids individually, maybe the dog on its own, the kids with the dogs, mom and dad with the dog, all these kind of combinations and so on. And then we get back to the studio and we get the photos up on the computer and we find excellent and awesome, and some of them have turned out really well. And as you say, we look through those to find the ones where we answer those potential objections of, do I look good? Does my partner look good? Are the kids going to like their photos, or are they going to start poking fun at their siblings and all that kind of thing? And then the client shows it for the design consultation and you go, fantastic, come on in. I'm so excited to see you. We've got some awesome images to show you. I've chosen the best 350.
Oh my God.
Sit down, have a drink, have some popcorn, and enjoy the show. And I'll be back in 2 days.
Yes. Oh my God.
How many photographs should we show them? How many is too many?
Usually in that sort of scenario, I would say I'd allow you to show up to 60, around that 50, 60 mark tops for that sort of family group. And that's also including individual shots of the dog.
Yeah, we can't forget the dog.
Well, he's usually the most important family member in a lot of cases.
Right.
Because he's the only one that still listens. And has his own story. So I'm expecting some individual shots of the dog as well. I think clients get overwhelmed very easily, and anything over 60 is throwing them into overwhelm. Because we understand our clients so well, we know the expressions that they're going to love. We've understood them to a point where, and they're visualizing shots or photographs of their child physically doing something. So expression and looking at the camera doesn't become as important to them anymore. And because it's not what we're displaying in our design consultation room, they're not looking for that either. So it's really easy, once you really understand the client and know them and understand the expressions that they're looking for, to get down to that sort of between 40 and 60, I suppose, would be ideal. A lot of photographers, when they submit their slideshow to me or their presentation to me for a critique, there's 100 or 150 photos in there. When I really look at all of the photos that a client would perceive to be the same, and because we don't understand the client well enough to know what expressions they love, by the time I've gone through it and removed everything that is similar, I'm lucky to have 10, 15 photos left in many, many cases. And in a lot of cases, I can predict how many shots the clients will buy, because it becomes really obvious which are the key photos. And unless we're putting stories together, they're not going to buy a lot, and they're not going to enjoy the experience, because they're spending half the time comparing and deleting photos. And if you allow your clients to go through that process, well, I don't know which expression they're going to love, and so I'm not going to decide, it's up to the client, and have that sort of mentality, then the clients are then entering what I call deletion mode. Now, when clients are comparing photos that are similar, what are they actually what's going through their head really? Sometimes it's which one do I look best in, and in order to decide that, which one do I look best in, what do I need, what's going through my head when I'm looking at, say, 3 images up on a screen, which you would never do, by the way. You would never, ever, ever show them more than one photograph on a screen at once. But let's go through, what a lot of people are doing is showing multiple photographs on a screen. When you've done that to a client, immediately, what are they looking for in all of those photos?
The mistakes, the flaws.
Yeah, they're looking for their flaws. Well, they find fault where there is no...
And it erodes their confidence.
Totally erodes their confidence. When we leave similar images, we're doing the same thing in that, we're not sure which one the client wants. And there's two that have slightly different expressions, but we couldn't decide which one was the best, so we've left it for the client. So what they then go into is this deletion mode, whereby they have to find fault. And then what they're left with is photographs which have less fault than others.
Yeah, that's an interesting way of looking at it, isn't it?
So rather than, if you've chosen the very best photos and made sure that there's nothing that they can... If a client has to say to you, oh, there was a similar shot like that, wasn't there? Can you put them both up on the screen? If a client says that to you, you know you've failed, because you should be able to express to them, even if there is a subtle difference, it's got to have a whole different meaning and a whole different perspective on their personality to warrant being there. So in a place where you've done this really well and a client can see each photo as something individual and something magical to them without them having to go through a deletion process, then every single photo that they've chosen as a favourite, which is a much better way of getting them to do it, choosing their favourites, once they've done that, it's their favourites, not a pile of photos that are not as bad as the other pile of photos. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense, yeah.
So suddenly that becomes a lot more valuable to them.
I think back to some of the projection sales sessions that I did, and where I had purposely whittled down the number of images that I was showing to a really small number. Nothing like the 40 or 50 that you mentioned, but more like 25.
Yeah, well, you would do around that for an individual or a couple. And we've done that many times too, down to 25. It's, that's reasonable.
I noticed that by doing that, my sales went up.
Yeah, because they don't have to say no to you so that many times.
And I'm not sitting there going, okay, so the first thing we'll do is we'll eliminate the ones you don't like, because that, like you say, that immediately puts them into that frame of mind of, oh, well, so now I have to find the ones I don't like. And so I'm now looking specifically for flaws and faults and things that aren't quite right. And it's very hard to get them out of that mode.
Yeah.
Once they've been through the process once, gone through the whole lot, and maybe they've eliminated half the pack, it's hard to get them out of that mode and back into the, okay, now let's pick the favorites.
And the fact that you're using that language and it's been the first place you went in whistling away, which is deleting and eliminating and going through a process of elimination, that's one of the biggest mistakes a lot of photographers make, is that they're looking to narrow it down or whittle it away or get it down to something. What we should be focused on from the beginning, and our communication to ourselves as that design consultation needs to be focused on choosing our favorites and choosing, because it's much easier to focus on choosing our favorites than focusing on what we're going to eliminate. So it's the same as going into the supermarket. Think of how many products are in the supermarket. If you had to look at every single product in the supermarket and eliminate all the ones you don't want, it's very overwhelming.
Yeah.
And that's exactly how clients feel, because we're now focused on everything we don't want and justifying, in our mind, why we don't want it and why it's so bad for us and why we don't want that. And then we lose sight of what we really want. You don't go into the supermarket and focus on all the things you don't want. You go in there and look for what you love and what you would like to put in your shopping trolley. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
And it really does throw clients into overwhelm, because there's just too many things to think about when we're focused on getting rid of what we don't want, as opposed to just focusing on what we love.
Now, I want to revisit something very quickly that you mentioned way back at the beginning of the conversation, and how it ties in at this point right here, which was during the excitement calls and the booking process, before you do the photography, you mentioned that at that point you are finding out from the client what product or end result would be most appropriate for them, based on who they are, the type of things they like and what they might be looking for, etc. And then we come to the design consultation. And so do you approach the design consultation purely from that standpoint in mind? So, for example, if it was determined during the booking phase that, a 30 by 40 wall portrait would be an appropriate end product for them, is that what you focus on exclusively during the design consultation, or is it more open than that?
Well, it's never a 30 by 40 photograph that we focused on in the excitement call or in the design consultation. It normally would be something like a collection of photos that shows how proud Timothy is because he's now learned how to stack blocks. And my child is the only 2-year-old in the world, and most parents believe this, that can do it the way that he does it. And I love the expressions he has. I love how gentle he is. And I love, at the end of that look of pride on his face as he walks up to me, holding it in front of his face with that little grin on his face. And that's the visualization that the client may have after the excitement call and what they're walking into the design consultation with. It's never about a 30 by 40 because it's meaningless to a client.
Okay, I understand now. I misunderstood at the beginning because it sounded as though they were deciding, or you were coming to some agreement at that point of what it was that they were actually shooting for.
We do, in that they then describe their home and they've decided that they wanted to put it above a 3-seater couch that is leather. And when they look at it, when we're putting something above that couch, and we've described the fact that it needs to look balanced above the couch. So size-wise, they're seeing that they're 3-seater couch and something that's going to look balanced above that, which is probably around about a 60-inch photo. But we would never say 60-inch. We would just say something that will look balanced above your 3-seater couch. So it still remains sort of quite flexible, but we know that we're walking into that design consultation knowing that we're going to put something together that's going to depict exactly what they wanted, and that size has got to sort of suit something for over their couch. But we also know that that's already sold. So when we go into that design consultation, we've sold that. So there's going to be a whole lot of other things that they're going to fall in love with. So you would never start with what's already sold. You would always start with, all those other things that they're really excited about right now, because that's sort of done and dusted already.
This is so different to what we're typically used to seeing.
That's why the results are so different.
Yeah. It really is. It's very different. Like I say, a typical sales presentation usually is, well, here are the photographs and here's my price list, and I think this would look nice over your sofa. Here are some smaller ones. Oh, by the way, if you're wondering what to do with the rest of the photographs, well, we can put them in a book, or you can have a set of 5x7 prints or something like that.
But who's to say that they don't want to do something more amazing with the rest of those photos? Because if those photos have meaning to the clients, why wouldn't they want, 2 or 3 pieces of wall art that, as a collection, each one might have 4 or 5 photographs that combine, maybe 4 or 5 canvases that fit together beautifully and tell that story. The minute you put a price list in front of somebody, really what you're doing is slapping them across the face and say, forget all of this emotion, forget how important your child is. Let's go back to reality and look at your bank account right now. Just rude. I don't think you can afford that. So you basically slap them across the face and say, wake up to yourself. Let's go to reality. And what you're doing is you're basically slapping them from an emotional place where they are right now into a logical mindset. And when they're entering that logical mindset, it's not about what they love and what they'd love to have. It becomes about, okay, we've entered the arena. It's me against you, and I'm now going to compete with you to try and screw down the price as much as possible.
Yeah, it's me against your wallet.
Yeah, who wants to be in that field, really? And I think that's where a lot of people have a lot of fear. But the issue is that you've just put a price list in front of somebody. And in most cases, I get price lists thrown at me all the time to review and have a look at. I mean, I've been in the industry for over 20 years, more than I care to say, and I can't work out their price list half the time. It's so complicated. Add some more confusion into the mix, and the clients really have no idea what to do or ask for, other than whatever is the cheapest, or go the disc option because that's their safety net. Because we've again made it really, really difficult for them to understand what is going on here. It just throws them into this overwhelmed state. They're in this euphoria of, oh my God, look at these photos. I love what you've done. It's amazing. When you then slap them with a price list and take them out of that, they're still sort of rattling in their head between, oh, hang on, what's going on now? And you've just confused them.
The CD option is really a way for them to defer the decision too, because they can say, well, just give me the disc, I'll take that home, and then we'll decide later on if we want to get some wall art made or some prints and that kind of thing. But at least we'll have the disc and it's safe and all that.
And the real issue is you've just given away the farm. Like, they've come for eggs and you've given away the farm, and you haven't done them a service at all, because they don't have that portal to access all of those feelings and emotions and what they value. The disc will just sit in a drawer and never be looked at again. And I've had so many clients say to me, it's $300 for the disc, and then after they've been through the experience, they're like, oh my God, how expensive was that disc? We never ever opened it, whereas we've spent $3,000 with you and we get to enjoy that every day, and we get to share that with the closest people in our lives because they come to our home and see it. So a lot of people will see that as a better value for money proposition. I just want to make one thing clear, because I can almost hear voices in my head. I'm not saying that you don't tell them the price and you don't share them the price in that design consultation. Physically handing them a price list and giving them a generic, okay, so go down the list and choose what you want, is not what we should be doing. What we should be doing is finding the right product and saying, okay, this is what I would recommend for you to put up on your wall. Through ProSelect, you can then scale it to size and say, this is the size that I would recommend. Don't you agree? This is the finish, and show them the finish, which should be displayed somewhere. Even if you're doing it at the in-person sale in their home, you should have a sample with you, or otherwise, if you have a dedicated space, it should be up on your wall. Show them the finish and say, is this what you're looking at? Great. So for something in this size, in this finish, you're looking at whatever it is, $1,500, $2,000, whatever it is for that collection. So then it becomes homes a tailored, customized piece of wall art, and they only have to think about that one price that they've now said, okay, it fits the purpose, it's the right size, I love the finish because it's in tune with everything else that I've created in that room and the style of my home. Or sometimes it's for a future home because they're renting and they know that their ideal home is not where they're living, so then you're really designing something for the future, which happens quite a lot as well. And then it ticks all the boxes. So then that way, when you are sharing that price with them, it becomes real, as opposed to, here's the price list, now start again and work out what you can afford. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. So one last question, and that is, I know that the photographers that you work with typically make fairly high ticket sales.
Yeah.
$3,000 plus, $4,000, $5,000 and so on. But what happens after the sales presentation, or should I say, really, what happens after the design consultation and the sale is made, and the clients walk out of the door, and then buyer's remorse sets in or something, and they come back and they say, oh, you know what, we think we overstretched ourselves a bit there, or maybe only the wife was there and the husband wasn't aware of how much she was spending and he got mad at her when she got home or something like that. How can they make these sales stick, or is that baked into the whole process?
It very, very, very rarely happens because it's all about serving the client and what they want. The clients have been quoted 3 to 4 times and have seen themselves spending $1,500, $2,000 on each piece of wall art throughout the excitement call journey. So in their mind, they've already spent that money multiple times with you, so it's no surprise at all. The other thing that what I teach, and it's all in the membership that I have, is that part of that excitement call is speaking to the partner and speaking to the husband and discovering his perception of who his children are. And in most cases, the guys are so much easier to talk to. It's just getting through the gatekeeper, which is the wife, to get to him. And because his vision of who his children are going to be very, very different to hers. So if you can incorporate that into the shoot, suddenly you've got effectively double the amount of photos that are relative to them that they would want to buy. Asking a woman what is special about herself is probably not going to give you a real sense of who she is. Whereas, a lot of times men are really trying to communicate what they love about their wives. And sometimes they struggle because they're not used to tapping into their emotions. And that excitement call journey enables us to get them to express themselves, and they value that. And we've quoted the guys as well, so both parties know how much it's going to be well before you've taken a photograph. And they're seeing the product hanging on their wall even before you've taken a photograph and know how much it costs. So it's very rare that even after you've had a $10,000 sale or a $12,000 sale, which happens regularly, it's very rare that you get somebody ringing to reduce their order. You do sometimes. If we got in our own way, they will ring and increase their order. I'm not saying it can't happen. It can happen, but it's rare. And it doesn't happen anywhere near as often as when these very same clients were only selling $200 and $300. It seemed to happen a lot more at that price level because price was never discussed. The other thing that would happen is that if mum turned up to the design consultation without dad, the design consultation would not go ahead.
That makes perfect sense. So to summarize really what you said, the fact that in the traditional way of doing things, a lot of sales don't stick. We hear a lot of times where photographers say, I'm so upset, I'm so frustrated because yesterday I made a really great sale. It was $3,000, $4,000. It was my biggest sale to date. And then this morning, I get an email or a phone call from the client saying, we're really sorry. We've got home, we talked it over, and we decided that it was too big a stretch and we want to cancel the order. That happens a lot. In the traditional process where the photographers see the sales part of the process as being distinct and separate from the creation of the photography and providing what it is that their clients truly desire and want. Whereas the way that you've described this, and I think this would be a point to make sure that people listening to this go back and listen to the part one of these two calls where Steve talked about the excitement calls. Mm-hmm. But that whole process, really, the sales element of it can't really be separated or distilled down into its own separate part, because it's baked into the whole process from start to finish. And essentially what you're saying, I think, is that the clients are selling themselves all the way through.
I think it's because we are so focused on serving the client and giving them something really meaningful and allowing a transformation in their family and their relationships, because we bothered to listen and we bothered to ask the questions that most people never ask them. And if they do, they're not really interested in the answers. They're just really asking it superficially without any intent and without any, I suppose, meaning behind why they've asked that question. Whereas if we are doing our job properly and created that experience for our clients, then this whole experience becomes transformational for them. If you take that example of what I just spoke about, of calling the husband and finding out what he loves about his wife and what he loves about his children, a lot of men really struggle to express that. And, if we are able to ask the right questions and get them to express themselves, what woman wouldn't love to know what's going on in her man's head? And being able to share that with her and giving her a whole new appreciation of where he's coming from and what he loves about his family. And for a lot of people, they haven't spent the time or given themselves the time to understand what is meaningful for them. And as an industry, if we are standing up for our clients and demanding for them, in order for them to continue along the process, that they take the time to rediscover themselves and rediscover their relationships and their families, then we're giving them their family back to them. And there's never an issue about price. There doesn't seem to, well, not ever, because there's always the exception. There's always an exception, but we don't run our business by the exception. And I think this is where a lot of photographers struggle, is that when the exception happens, they change their whole business model around that exceptional person. But when we do this properly, people willingly will reward you. And I think this is where a lot of photographers struggle, is that what we're getting is a reward for the value that we've given. We haven't had to sell it. It's not a sale. For me, when we're selling something, and you hear photographers talk about this all the time, we're pushing people into something that they don't want. And I think that's why you get so much buyer's remorse, is when you're pushing something on someone rather than focusing on what they love and what they would want to have and creating a solution for them and really guiding them through a process whereby they're having what they want and we're creating a transformation for them to a point where they desire it so much, where the value that you're giving totally outweighs the money that you're asking for, then there's no issue about them paying. Now, when the clients that I mentor go through the program and implement all of these things, what they're finding is clients are spending a lot more money, which is great, but they're not having to push anything on anyone. The clients are desiring it and wanting it. And when they do call a day or two later, what they're doing in a lot of cases is they're ringing up to say thank you, because it didn't hit them until the following day what we've actually done for them. And in many cases, photographers are receiving hampers and gifts and all sorts of things from their clients because we've done such a great job and impacted them at such a level that they just weren't expecting. So I'm not saying that buyer's remorse will never ever happen, because we never get every single job or every single shoot or relationship that we're having with a client perfect. It doesn't happen every single time. But in almost all cases, it doesn't seem to happen because the value we've given is so much more than the money we've asked, and people are happy to pay in that case. And we've prepped them so well beforehand that they're expecting to spend that sort of money anyway.
Well, Steve, thank you so much. This has been fantastic. You've brought up so many thought-provoking ideas and concepts here, and what we've talked about today is so different to what we see as the traditional workflow or the process that people go through during a portrait sale from start to finish, if you like, that I can really see how this gives great value to the clients who are going to enjoy this amazing photography for the rest of their lives. So, Steve, thank you so much. This has been wonderful. Thanks again for being so generous with your time and your expertise. And I am very confident that we're going to have you on here again for another
Well, there you go.
Another discussion about some other elements of this whole thing, because this is, it's refreshing to have something new and different to put forward as a workable, sustainable business model for photographers.
Well, we've found that it is something that works really well, and clients seem to love it and respect it. All of those myths about I'm in the wrong area and clients don't value me, I think we need to really look at how much we value ourselves and the real service that we're giving to our clients, because that usually is part of the issue. So, all of it I've recorded in lots of different programs in my membership. So if people want to know more and they want to get into it, there's all of it's being documented in the membership, and you can look at it in your own time, because it's all in video format.
Well, thank you so much, Steve, and you have a great rest of the day.
Thank you. It's all the start of my day, so I've got to get into some work now, Nigel.